How does a state project start with a $32 billion promise, spiral towards a $100 billion price tag, and then just like that, lose $4 billion in federal funding?
It's the definition of a credibility crisis.
Hmm.
And that is exactly what just happened to the California high-speed rail project.
A total mess.
Yeah.
We're dedicating this deep dive to understanding what is really a catastrophic accountability check for this project.
Specifically, that decision from the Federal Railroad Administration to just terminate $4 billion in grant funding.
Okay, let's just jump right into that news hook.
Yeah.
So in July 2025, the FRA, they announced they're pulling about $4 billion from the project. And I mean, their reasoning was just brutal.
Oh, they were not subtle at all. They used phrases like, and I'm quoting here, mismanagement and incompetence.
Wow.
Yeah. They flat out said the project had, quote, no viable path to being finished on budget or, even on time. I mean, that's the federal government making a very, very clear statement.
And of course, California officials, Governor Newsom, they immediately said they'd fight it in court. They called the move illegal.
They did, and their argument is that this threatens, 15,500 jobs? And basically abandons the workforce in the Central Valley that's, relying on this construction.
So the stakes here are incredibly high.
They are. We're looking at this whole thing through the lens of accountability, of cost control, using the 2025 project update report and all the coverage around it.
And the real question is, can the state even recover from this? I mean, decades of delays, costs spiraling, and a vision that just keeps shrinking. You might end up with a train line in the Central Valley that doesn't actually go to the big cities.
Exactly.
You deserve to know what happened to that huge original plan, why the federal money just vanished, and what kind of frantic last-minute reforms the state is now being forced to try. Okay, let's unpack this. To really get the scale of this, we have to go back, way back to 2008. Remind us what voters were actually promised.
The original vision was, it was genuinely ambitious. It was an 800-mile system connecting San Francisco all the way down to Los Angeles.
Okay, the whole spine of the state.
The whole spine. And crucially, it was supposed to be done by 2029. And the total cost, $32 billion. That was the benchmark.
$32 billion. So we started with a budget for, a family sedan, and now we're looking at the price of a private jet with no wings.
Where are the numbers today?
They're alarming. The estimate for just phase one, so just the LA to San Francisco part, has gone from that $32 billion up to as high as $99.8 billion.
That's more than triple.
It's more than triple the original price tag, yeah. And that's not even adjusting for inflation.
And the timeline, 2029 is what, a distant memory?
It's completely gone.
Yeah.
A historical footnote. The new goal, which is much more modest, is to just get passenger service started on a small piece.
This is the early operating segment they talk about.
Exactly, just 171 miles between Merced and Bakersfield. And even that isn't projected to start until sometime between 2030 and 2033. So we're talking a decade late for just a fraction of the route.
A small fraction. And that scope shrinkage is so important. It's really hard to call it a California high-speed rail when the focus is a 171-mile segment stuck in the Central Valley.
Which is exactly what the FRA report called them out on.
They hammered them on it. The review said the current segment, quote, lacks significant airport connections and does not connect with either Los Angeles or San Francisco. It's an island.
The train to nowhere.
That phrase sounds harsh, but when you look at the financials, it starts to look, pretty accurate.
And then you see the authority itself admitting to past mistakes. They're now revising their designs to get rid of over-engineered assets. What does that even mean?
It's a quiet admission of massive failure. It means for years they were basically gold-plating the project.
How so?
The standards they were using were way too expensive, too complex. They were demanding custom-built, bespoke solutions when proven international standards would have worked just fine.
So it confirms that bad management, not just, outside forces, drove these costs into the stratosphere.
Absolutely. It's just mind-boggling that you spend over $13 billion before you decide to take a fresh look at your own design standards.
It's like building a skyscraper and only checking the blueprints after the foundation is poured, and the bill is 3 times what you expected.
That's a perfect analogy. And it makes you wonder, of that nearly $100 billion price tag, how much of it is just baked in inefficiency?
Okay, let's talk about the federal hammer dropping. This has always been a political football, right?
Always. Remember back in 2021, the Biden administration actually restored almost $1 billion that the previous administration had cut. So the political support was there for a while.
Which makes this 2025 decision to terminate $4 billion. It makes it feel even bigger. This wasn't just politics, according to the FRA.
No, they laid out a case. They said California was out of compliance in 9 different areas. It was about performance.
And what was the biggest failure? What pushed them over the edge?
One of the most critical ones was, frankly, embarrassing. They failed to pick a train set vendor.
The company that actually builds the trains.
The company that builds the actual high-speed trains, yes. The deadline for that was December 2024. They missed it so badly they had to scrap the whole process and start over.
Wait, how can you build a railway if you don't even have a contract for the trains themselves?
You can't. It points to just complete administrative gridlock. And this was happening while they were already facing a financial cliff.
Right, because even before the feds pulled their money, the project was already short, wasn't it?
It was. They were facing an estimated $7 billion shortfall for just that small Merced to Bakersfield segment. They were already deep underwater.
So the federal cut just made a crisis into a catastrophe.
Exactly. And while California officials are fighting back, calling it illegal and blaming hostility to public investments, it doesn't really change the facts on the ground.
And the authority can point to things like 60 miles of guideway being built.
Right. Or 54 major structures completed. But those are sunk costs. That doesn't fix the fundamental credibility problem.
And what's so wild is that none of this is a surprise.
Not at all. There was an oversight report from all the way back in 2013 that warned about almost all of these same issues.
13 years ago.
Yep. Unrealistic timelines, weak cost controls, no viable funding plan. So the federal decision in 2025, it wasn't a shock. It was the culmination of nearly 2 decades of ignored warnings.
Okay, let's shift to the money, because the financial instability here is maybe the scariest part.
It is, and the authority even admits that the way it's been funded, this sort of stop-and-go approach, has been a huge driver of the cost overruns.
Explain that stop-and-go trap. How does that make things more expensive?
Well, imagine you're a contractor. The state says they need a bridge, but they can only guarantee your funding for the next 6 months.
You charge them a massive premium for that risk.
A massive premium. You have to cover the risk of stopping work, idling all your expensive equipment, and then trying to remobilize later. That uncertainty has cost taxpayers billions.
And this all leads to California's main funding tool, the cap-and-trade program.
Right. This is the state's carbon tax, basically. The rail project gets 25% of that revenue every quarter. It's supposed to bring in somewhere between $750 million and $1.25 billion a year.
But the key word there is volatile. It's tied to the market.
Precisely. If the economy slows down or the price of carbon drops, the project's funding dries up. And you're right back in that stop-and-go cycle.
So to fix this, they're trying to extend the program past its 2030 sunset date.
They're desperately trying. Because if they can get that extension, they can do something called securitization.
Okay, break that down for us. What does securitize actually mean?
It means they take all that predicted future money from the carbon tax, say for the next 10 or 20 years, and use it as collateral to borrow a huge pile of cash today.
So it gives them the upfront money they need?
It does, but it's a huge gamble. If that carbon market underperforms in the future, the state is still on the hook for this massive loan. The risk for taxpayers gets even bigger.
So this financial scramble is forcing some big internal changes, right?
It is. New leadership came in late 2024, and they're trying to completely overhaul the organization. They want to eliminate the bureaucracy, hold contractors accountable, basically run it more like a business.
And a big part of that is just not making the same simple mistakes over and over again.
It sounds basic, but yes. Historically, they would start construction before they even owned all the land or before they moved the utility lines.
That sounds insane.
It's unbelievably inefficient. Every time a bulldozer hits a property line they haven't acquired, the whole project stops, and the contractors send them a massive bill for the delay. These kinds of unforced errors have cost hundreds of millions.
Okay, but we do have to acknowledge the economic impact. It has created jobs, especially in the Central Valley where they're needed.
That's a fair and critical point. The $13 billion invested since 2006 has supported about 109,000 job years.
And right now, there are over 15,500 people working on it.
Yes, and they've hit some important equity goals, too. 70% of those jobs have gone to people from disadvantaged communities, and almost all the spending has stayed in California.
So those are real, tangible benefits.
They are. But this is where the conversation turns to opportunity cost. When a project is this far over budget and so far behind schedule, you have to weigh those jobs against other possible investments.
What do you mean?
Well, critics are calling this project an expensive albatross. They argue that the tens of billions of dollars tied up here could be used for other critical infrastructure that people need right now.
Like what, specifically?
Things that affect every single Californian. Think about water storage and conveyance, which is a constant crisis. Or repairing old K-12 schools. Or, a huge one is upgrading the state's electrical grid to prevent blackouts and wildfires.
So the question for you, the listener, becomes about priorities. Is an isolated, scaled-back rail line that might be finished in 2033 worth more than fixing water and power systems today?
That's the heart of the credibility crisis. It's not just politics, it's management. The fact that they're only now, after spending billions, trying to fix their basic design and governance confirms how deep the problems run.
So, to sum up this deep dive, we've got a project that just fundamentally failed on its promises of speed, scope, and budget. Federal funding got pulled because of chronic structural problems.
And now the state is pinning its hopes on a volatile carbon tax, a risky financial gamble, and some last-ditch internal reforms to save a project that's a shadow of its former self.
If California's massive spending struggles this badly, if it faces a $4 billion federal funding cut because of mismanagement, should the state pivot? Should it take that cap-and-trade money away from this isolated rail line and redirect it to fix immediate crises like water and power? Something for you to mull over.